Good afternoon, and first of all, I'm sorry we're late. The reason why we're late is I went to log in and then it said computer error needs to restart. One of those computer said no moments, but a little bit later than advertised. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the midday show. It's 3 minutes after 12, so the almost midday show. So we do some hellos, and we got a guest that's been on before, actually, and talking about one of my favourite subjects, mental health and overcoming things and all sorts of good stuff. So let's bring him on. James Gwinnett, hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Technology is wonderful when it works, isn't it?
It hasn't let me down yet, but hey, what's 3 minutes between friends? I saw you in the green room and I'm like, oh my God, I've got to tell you, he's going to be sitting there thinking, what the hell's going on? So what brings you here? So you've written you only went and wrote a book, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I've got to do the old plug here. I chatted with Russ, I say it must be 3 or 4 years ago now. It was just as COVID was sweeping the world, I was due to run a series of ultra marathons through the desert, one of these mad challenges, to raise money for the Mental Health Foundation, based on the fact that my story, for want of a better word, involves a period of mental ill health and overcoming that, depression, alcoholism. I can go into the various details of it, of course, but
I'd love to know how you did it.
Sure, yeah. So the outcome of that, after a bit of reflection based on my wife giving birth to a little baby boy last December, and the various emotions that came with that, as sort of questioning my place on the planet and my role in helping him navigate the various issues that we see in the world. And let's be honest, it's a bit of a mess. I mean, today's news of coming from the other side of the pond.
I think we've had a few new ones added just today, to be honest.
Demonstration of that, isn't it? So the book was my way of having a bit of a rant about everything that's going on. But although it's a little bit cynical about everything that's going on and talks about sort of the ups and downs of life, the underlying message is one of positivity, in that if we build what I call mental fitness, and by all means, let's go into the ways of doing that. But if we build mental fitness, we can not just survive life, but actually we can thrive and we can achieve everything that we want to achieve.
That's the thing, because I think so many people are of the mindset there's so much chaos going on in the world, and they feel a bit kind of desperate about it. What can one person do? What can I do? And I think the answer is to build your own resources, because then you're a lot more powerful presence in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which isn't always the popular answer, because people do like to rant and blame, don't they? But I think it's the truest one.
And we can't all solve the world's issues, but we can work hard to solve our own. And the world has a habit of throwing problems at us, but those are problems that in the vast majority of those problems are solvable with the right attitude. And it sounds very sort of a bit fluffy and a bit hippy dippy to say that everything is going to be rosy, but I genuinely believe that with the right mindset, we can at least work through problems and come up with solutions that put us in at least a better position than we were in prior.
And the very words you're using, that's certainly not the mindset of someone that's suffering from depression. How did you overcome this and get to this good place that you're in now?
So I need to take a bit of a backward step, if I may, to sort of set the background as to how it all came about. Crikey, where are we? 10, 11 years ago was playing a fairly serious level of rugby. By no means sort of top flight, but semi-professional. I was getting a bit of pocket money for my efforts alongside a full-time job, sort of national league type stuff, enough to take it extremely seriously, eat all the right things, train hard,
Sure.
gym work, fitness, all the rest of it, all geared around being the best rugby player I could possibly be come 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, and then enjoying a few beers with the lads afterwards. I had a very serious neck injury one Saturday. I vividly remember the 9th of February 2013, clattering into one of my opponents head first rather than hitting him with my shoulder, and the compression, collision compacted my neck, and I cracked a vertebra in the base of my neck. And I went from being a fit, strong, I'm 6'5" and weighed 17 stone at the time. Alpha male, fairly, in my mind, fairly invincible chap, and you might question whether or not that was a positive identity or not. But I went from that image that I had cast of myself to being one of frailty and vulnerability and being in a very dark place because I was no longer able to play this sport that I devoted my life to and loved, and I didn't want to hang out with my friends anymore because I didn't feel like I fitted in any longer, and I didn't feel like I'd sort of earned my stripes, as it were, in terms of being
quite a shock to the system.
Very much, a 180 adjustment in terms of where I saw myself fitting in my life, society, or the rest of it. And I went from, as I say, being this invincible alpha male to being shutting myself away, not wanting to see people, drinking during the day, hiding my drinking from loved ones. I was I was engaged at the time. That relationship ended in the aftermath, and the sort of ensuing 3 years really were spent on this spiral of. You'd have to go deep into whether depression started the alcoholism or the alcoholism started the depression. I'm not sure which.
They're great kissing cousins, aren't they?
Exactly.
They're great bedfellows. I can understand why, because if people have 180, particularly with Lou, when you had a powerful self-image like that, and what happened just turned that image, like you say, 180 degrees in itself, and that's going to be damaging when you hold a powerful image of yourself. So I can understand why people in any situation like that would turn to a substance, let's say alcohol, because they're doing it to feel better. But the problem is it doesn't make it better long term.
It was the classic self-medication. I thought, and actually it started off, I don't know, is innocently the right word? It started off one afternoon. I was housebound for 3 months with this neck injury.
No, innocently is completely the right word, I think.
A rigid neck collar, and wasn't allowed to go to work. I was told to limit my exercise, walking even, to sort of limit the amount of walking that I could do in nature. So I wasn't really able to go outside much. So I found myself watching an inordinate amount of daytime television, and there's only so many episodes of Friends you can watch on repeat.
Yeah.
I found myself walking to the fridge one day to ask open the fridge looking for answers when you don't know what the question is, and there's a nice cold beer there, and it started one day very innocently, and it just progressed from there, to the extent that, as I say, I was hiding it from loved ones, hiding it from my fiance at the time, and eventually it all came out. And as I say, it was a 3-year spiral into a dark place. I eventually hit rock bottom on my own in a dingy hotel room with an empty bottle of Jack Daniels next to me.
Oh, God.
Not something I'm particularly proud of, but that revelation, and it was a revelation, that sort of light bulb moment that something needed to change, was the kick up the arse, for want of a better expression, that I needed to do something about this, and I sought solace in the AA program. I suppose the phrase "I became addicted to being sober" is valid. I did hypnotherapy, I did counselling, I did webinars, seminars, read books, researched everything online. I did everything I possibly could to kick this habit. But the AA was, and I have to say great things about the program. It was my saving grace. But
brilliant.
As part of that program, without delving into the 12 steps in too much detail, they ask you to or encourage you to find what they call a higher power, and it's something that you can sort of devote yourself to, that is the driver of your sobriety. And for some people, that's
they're not too strict on the definition, are they?
It's not, and there's a lot of sort of negative view on the program as a whole, because it's deemed to be very religious. But I'm as religious as a block of cheese.
Me too. But I would call it spiritual. I wouldn't call it religious.
Is a better description. But the phrase "as you understand" God is you. So if you believe in elephants with 8 legs or flying monkeys or Yoda, or it doesn't matter, whatever you're able to attribute your sobriety to and use
As
that
long
as
as it's bigger than you and it's benevolent and it can help you, it doesn't
indeed,
really matter what it is. The
indeed.
criticism I hear is if people are agnostic or atheist, it's like, well, how can I? I don't believe it. That's the difficulty I understand people have with it.
Everyone believes in something, and it's about finding that. And for me, it was believing in regaining my health and my fitness.
Good enough.
And it might be fate. I'm not sure I believe in such things. But a couple of weeks later, I found myself watching the London Marathon on television one Sunday morning, and it hit me. Boom! This is it. I need this. And I was overcome with emotions watching 40, 50,000 people trundling around London, all wearing fancy dress, and people dressed up as rhinos and carrying fridges and all the rest of it.
But that's a powerful experience. They do say that once you have an intention, then things start to manifest around that. Things start to come to you to help you fulfill that intention. You've probably heard that. They call it law of attraction. It doesn't matter what you call it, but that does seem to be true. I think once there's a definite intention made, the opportunity to fulfill it seems to come step by step. Would you agree with that? Or
absolutely, and it's something actually I cover in a later chapter in the book with a guy called Jim Hughes, who's a sort of professional business coach. He talks about the power of making change, and there being various steps to that. One is the recognition that you need to make the change. Then the second step is recognizing what you are changing to, and you need both. You can't just say to yourself, well, I need to make a change, without falling in love with the concept of what you're moving towards. There needs to be a push and a pull.
Because you need the motivation to do it. It's got to be changing into something that's going to benefit you or excite you or motivate you in some way. Okay. Another way of putting it, if it's a should, I should make changes. Shoulds aren't powerful enough. They're not a strong enough emotional experience. A should or an ought to or a must. We should all over ourselves every day. But something like that, when it's something that key, and then you saw a powerful experience like that on telly, that's got emotional momentum, and clearly it worked. Here you are.
Yeah, absolutely, it did. I mean, the next day I signed up for the following year's marathon. I gave myself, I wrote myself a training program. I got all committed to it, dedicated to it. Started the running. I had some vague element of residual fitness from my rugby days, so I wasn't didn't start having to walk 100 meters and get out of breath. But I had never run anything more than about 10 kilometers, and a marathon is 26 miles, 42 kilometers.
Yes, indeed.
So this year-long program scoped out, and well, long story short, I crossed the finish line at the London Marathon the following year in just under 4 hours, having run the whole thing. And this just the emotions got the better of me. I can remember kneeling down, bursting into tears, and kissing the concrete, and then hugging a random stranger next to me who was dressed as a dinosaur or something.
You had a Pope moment.
Yeah, very much so, because of the amount of abuse that I put my body through. But also, the emotions of the day, but it was also the fact that it was a year-long process. It had given me back structure in my life. It had given me routine. It had given me discipline, and it had taught me the power of something greater than myself, as we've just.
Yes, it could even be a positive aspiration. It doesn't have to be anything particularly even religious or spiritual. Just a positive aspiration, as long as it's got that emotional oomph to it. I think that's all that's really needed. To be honest with you,
I think that's it.
And clearly it works. It's different for everyone. Were you doing that in tandem with the AA, or did the AA come first?
So I then had an interesting, another epiphany, I suppose, shortly afterwards. I was sat in an AA meeting, which were an hour long, and I thought to myself, I could be using this hour to go running. I haven't been back to an AA meeting since, and this was 8 years ago. So that it became running. This I go into a lot of detail about this in the book. Running became my mental fitness, and I don't run for my physical fitness. I run for my mental fitness. It makes me feel better rather than makes me It makes me feel better in my mind rather than in my body, and the bodily benefits come with that. You go to the gym, if you say to yourself, I need to get fit, I need to be able to bench press 100 kilos, whatever it is. If you can't bench press 100 kilos on that day, you feel bad about yourself. Whereas if you go to the gym and come out of it an hour later thinking to yourself, I feel better in my person, in my mind, that is of benefit. So that is how I now see mental.
Because they're both important, aren't they? And they affect each other. On the days when I do really good physical exercise, I feel better mentally, no question about it. On the days I take better care of myself, I feel better mentally, and that does translate. But then when my body feels better, that helps. But it's a virtuous circle, isn't it?
Yeah. And the trouble we have, and that's again something I go into in the book, with a girl called Esme, who's a sort of renowned personal trainer. She does a lot of TV presenting for the likes of the London Marathon. She's a friend of mine. She talks about the fact that mental fitness isn't tangible. You can't see it. The physical fitness, you can say to yourself, I am able to do 6 reps of 100 kilos, or I'm able to, if you're 12 years old and in PE class, I'm able to run the bleep test, or I have a 6-pack, or whatever it is. But you can't see mental fitness. So we find it very hard to attribute or to assign goals to it. But it is possible to jot down how you feel on a day-to-day basis. Or how do you feel, rather than saying how do you feel,
correlate that with the physical things that you did, and from there you'll work out.
We have a terrible habit. Exactly. Yeah. We have a terrible habit when we ask each other, are you okay? You say, yeah, fine. It's a far better question to ask, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? And if you can track that over time, you can say, 7.
And then you get data, and from data you get feedback, and from the feedback you can create the programs.
And if on any given day you wake up and you're a 4, you can assess, well, why is that? Did I not sleep well? Did I have go to sleep on an argument with my missus, or whatever it might be? And you can start recognizing the whys, and you can start recognizing the emotions that come with this. And
I think it's also the reasons why you're doing it as well. For you, it's the best of reasons, but for some, it may be possible to be really physically fit, but not mentally happy at all. If they're doing it out of, like you touched on, ego, I've got to be able to do this, or competing with someone in an unhealthy way. You could have the fittest body in the world and still not be mentally fit. It's a healthy body. It's a healthy mind in a healthy body, not a super competitive mind. If you're going to compete with anyone, compete with yourself, I think is the message here, isn't it?
100%. And again, Esme, chapter 7, I think it is, talks as from a personal training perspective. She talks about her clients coming to her and saying, well, I want a 6-pack. And she said, why? Why do you want a 6-pack? Is that going to make you feel better? Once you've got a 6-pack, what then? You want a better 6-pack, don't you? So it's a never-ending society. I talk a lot about in the book about sort of societal pushes and pulls. It's the appearances that we think we want for ourselves, that actually it's because we see pictures of athletes on billboards promoting sports brands or nutrients or
what we're looking for is the feeling associated with it.
Exactly.
Because if you start from that place and get that feeling place first and proceed from there, and I think there's also quite, and probably in your book, there's a lot of science on that now, that I think it's pretty much what it is proven now, that happiness leads to success rather than the other way around. Yeah. So people, if I have that, I'll be happy. No, be happy, and you will have that.
The famous phrase is something like success without happiness is failure, or something like that.
Something like that. And the other proven one is pleasure is productive, which is absolutely heretical to some people's nose against the grindstone way of thinking, but it's proved. Pleasure in every day will get a lot more done than nose against the grindstone. Force.
Find something you love and you never work a day in your life
and it turns out these so-called fridge magnet cliches are true, which is good, which is a relief actually. So if the opposite was true, no, it's nose against the grindstone, no pain, no gain. It's not that appealing, really, is it? So what does
I
an
mean,
average day look like?
no pain, no gain is also true, but that's perhaps another
Yeah.
story.
What does an average day look like for you now? Are you
So now, I mean, long story short, I went on from the marathon, and that sort of that gave me the bug, and I after I'd spent a few days ice bathing myself and feeling sorry for myself because of the sore muscles, and walking backwards down flight of stairs because of something called eccentric exercise, which is not, in fact, people pretending to play Quidditch on fake broomsticks. I thought, well,
I
actually,
think I've read about it. I think Michael Mosley talked about this.
I don't know. Anyway, each to their own. But I found myself thinking, well, I mean, it was bloody brilliant. The marathon. It was the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
But it was brutal. It was really, it was really hard. And anyone that runs a marathon deserves a massive, great big pat on the back, round of applause, whatever it might be. But I thought to myself a couple of days later, well, that wasn't too bad. It's called type 2 fun. When something you do is not particularly enjoyable at the time, but afterwards, on reflection, it's not actually that bad. And I started looking at longer and longer distances and harder endurance challenges, working up from marathon to double marathon, and then I did a run across the north of the UK from Carlisle to Newcastle in 2018, which was 70 miles. And then and actually on that run, I got you get talking to people as you're running, and you overtake people, and you walk, and you meet people along the way. Although it's quite a solitary endeavor, it's also a bit of it's also quite a sort of close-knit community activity. I got chatting to a guy who was telling me about a previous run that he'd done that was 100 miles. And I thought, no, you can't run 100 miles in one go. That's ridiculous. But it became so seed in the back of my mind as to my next challenge. Along the way, I was lucky enough. Well, lucky is relative. It's a matter of perspective. Lucky enough to take part in SAS Who Dares Wins, the Channel 4 TV show. I got beasted up and down the Andes by Ant Middleton and crew, which was a phenomenal experience. Again, it's a matter of perception. It's how you look at it. I didn't think it was brutal. I thought it was just an absolutely mind-blowingly brilliant experience. And I learned the fact that the Special Forces have a rule where they say that if you think you're done, you're only 40% done. They call it the 40% rule. And that mantra, that mindset of being able to just push on and put one foot in front of the other. The Middletons, the directing staff, they weren't looking for the fittest, fastest, bravest recruit. They were just looking for the guys that would just keep going. And that mindset fueled my drive to do this 100-mile challenge. I signed up for something just before COVID. That's what I was talking to Russ about. I was going to run a series of ultra marathons across Sri Lanka. That was cancelled because of COVID. But I ended up doing the distance to raise money for the Mental Health Foundation. Ended up doing the distance, 250 kilometres in 5 days around London. I got in touch with nurses and policemen, and they said, "Yeah, fine, crack on." There was obviously all the restrictions and things like that imposed by dear old Boris at the time. And I then took on a 100-mile ultra from London to Oxford along the River Thames. Completed that, and again, it's the mindset of just keep going, just put one foot in front of the other. I get a lot of people who, when I talk about this stuff, they say, "Oh, I could never do that," or "Why?" And I could tell you a lot of reasons why not. I mean, it hurts, it chafes, it's you get all the range of emotions. I call it 4 seasons in one day. But the reasons why, well, because I can. That's the beauty of it, and it's
good enough reason.
It's the mindset of just sticking to it, which
powerful. I just want to challenge one bit on that, because I'm always for the. How much does that 40% rule of the Special Forces hold true in your experience? Because sometimes there is a time to stop and kick back. People that don't tend to burn out or injure themselves. When is it a good time to use that, and when not?
So that's a very, very good question, and I think, I mean, I use the analogy of ultra running, but this is equally relevant. I use it as a metaphor for life, and I think this is the important thing for anyone listening to. I'm not suggesting that everyone goes out and runs an ultra marathon. If you want to, great. But if you don't, that's fine. I can understand. What ultra running teaches you is to know yourself. It's the old sort of Socratesism, know thyself. It teaches you to be aware of what's going on in your body, what's going on in your mind. And when you get these negative thoughts of, no, I can't take another step. I don't want to take another step. It hurts. It's cold. I haven't eaten enough. It's raining. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're able to override that. It gives you an enormous opportunity. And that's what the special forces mindset is. It's the understanding of the emotions that you are going through. It's the recognition of when your brain, because your brain is a remarkable piece of kit that will protect you. Ultimately, it's the brain has allowed us to survive evolution for 2.5 million years by being.
Well, they do say that our default is survival, and this is what holds a lot of people back. I think because the brain will try and keep you in that comfort zone all the time for safety.
It will,
but growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone, does it?
There's no comfort in the comfort zone. Is a nice little phrase, and you're absolutely right.
Oh, I like that.
There's no comfort in the comfort zone.
No, that's good, because the comfort zone is comfortable, but eventually it gets a bit dull.
It does, and this is where the problems happen in our mind. I got comfortable, sat at home on my own drinking beer, but I was deeply uncomfortable, and it doesn't challenge us. Now, the whole survival thing is, I could talk for hours about this, and there's something called homeostasis, which is where the body is in a sort of state of stability. Your heart rate's normal, your breathing normal, your digestive system is working as a result of that. As soon as the body leaves that because of a danger or because of a perceived danger, whatever it might be, the body enters the fight or flight mode, your digestive system shuts down, and your body, therefore, it's not a sustainable state for your body to be in. Your body then instantly says, stop, relax, calm down. And that applies to something like being chased by a saber-toothed tiger 2.5 million years ago, equally to even the thought of going for a 5K run will prompt most of us to say, nah, I'll do it tomorrow. But tomorrow you're going to have exactly the same thought. That's the problem. The body wants us to just lay low and survive. It will be that from a special point of view, if we were to sit in the corner, eat and procreate, that would be enough. It would ensure the survival of the species. But as you say, it doesn't promote growth. It doesn't allow us to achieve our aspirations. It doesn't allow us to.
Ultimately, probably doesn't feel very good long term.
It's not fulfilling in the long term. Exactly. So it's short-term gain for long-term pain, when we should be aiming for the opposite. We should be putting ourselves through short-term pain, albeit difficult and challenging and painful, for long-term growth, pleasure, as you said a minute ago, and all of the lovely stuff that comes with that.
Comes along with it, yeah. A couple of questions. You're getting a lot of love from Joanna Wilson. Hello, Joanna.
Hello, Joanna. That's very kind of you.
There we go. Spot on. She's liking the cut of your jib, sir. Go back to Paul Claridge.
Joanna, buy the book. There we go.
There we go. Feel free to plug that as much as you like. Paul says, I've always thought having a positive attitude and a positive outlook is key to aiding our mental and physical health, though it's not always possible to be positive, as I know only too well. Even trying to think positive can help. And then he says, would you agree admitting to yourself you have a problem and recognizing it is the first step to healing? Well, that's step one of AA, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, without doubt. And again, I talk about it in the book. The problem doesn't have to be addiction. It can be anything. And I use the example of a leaky tap in the book. Right? If you've got a problem, recognizing that problem and then seeking help is the first way to go about solving that problem. Yeah. It's the old adage: a problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it?
Yeah, my dad used to say that.
that worked for General Motors that said that years ago. So, but specifically in the program, in the AA program, the recognition element is key. But again, it counts for anything. I use the addiction analogy because that's my personal experience. I recognized that I had a problem, and I went and got help, and that came in the form of AA. I then, as part of that process, I had a decision to make as to how I involved everyone else I knew, and I came to the conclusion that the more people that knew about my issues, the better, because they would then help me as well. So rather than being secretive and trying to hide it from my friends and being ashamed of this problem, this mental health problem and addiction that I had, I told every single person that I knew that I had a drinking problem, because then that in the future, that avoided people coming to me and saying, "Oh, James, mate, do you want a pint?" Or, "Oh, go on, mate, you'll just have another one for the road, won't you?" Or "What's wrong with you? Why aren't you having a drink?" Because you get
alcohol's weird in the sense it's the only drug we get criticised for not taking.
I had this conversation yesterday, actually, about if alcohol were introduced into society today, if it didn't exist 5,000 years ago, if someone invented alcohol today, the government would not pass it as legal, because it is a poisonous, addictive drug. Right?
Well, it is. It's so socially accepted. If
This is it.
If I was standing outside the school gates, if I had young kids, and I said to one of the other mums or dads, "Oh, it's nearly wine o'clock or beer o'clock," they'd probably smile and go, "Good for you."
Yeah,
but if I said, "Oh, I'm going to go home and roll a joint," even though it's been proven that cannabis is 5 times less damaging to the self and society than alcohol, can you imagine what they'd say?
I mean, it's never up to me to tell anyone else that they shouldn't be drinking. It's not up to me to say to someone, "You have a drinking problem." Everyone is individual, and my wife enjoys a glass of wine. I have a 10-month-old son. If he wants to drink when he's older, that's absolutely fine. I go out with all my friends. We go to rugby games. They sink 10 pints and they have a laugh.
Rugby players love to do that. And you literally don't touch a drop now, no?
I haven't touched a drop for 8.5 years. But what I would say is that if you believe you have a problem with alcohol, you probably do. That's very black and white. But the alcohol addiction is such a grey area, from someone who is capable of going without it for a month, but then decides they want to go on a binge and loses 3 days of their life, and ends up waking up in a wheelie bin on the south coast or whatever.
I'd say that's problematic. Yeah,
I'm speaking from personal experience, in case that wasn't obvious.
Well, that's not. I tell you what, my friend, he's better now, but I think it was 85 hospital visits, and he woke up once on the tracks at Wimbledon railway station, not knowing how he got there.
There you go. So you've got this spectrum of.
And I'd say that's the problem.
Again, it's not for me to say, but yeah, that's a problem. You've got this spectrum of people who, you call them the functioning alcoholics. They go through, they work hard, they're on 100 grand salaries, they work in hedge funds, whatever it might be, trading, and then but they're going home and they're seeing off a bottle of wine every evening. Yeah, you've got people who won't touch a drop of alcohol and then will binge, and you won't see them for 3 days, like I've just said, or that whole spectrum through to the stereotypical, brown paper bag on the park bench, white lightning cider type stuff. So there is such a grey area, and alcoholic has such a negative connotation to it that people therefore struggle to identify, if that's the right word, with having a problem.
I think you're hitting on something really important here, because I think most people would think dirty, scuzzy, park bench, down and out. But like you say, it can be, it's sort of people you least expect, the most seemingly functional, high achievers.
I walk through, I work in Bath. I live in a little village just outside Bath. I come into Bath 2 or 3 days a week, and I walk through the centre of Bath. It's a World Heritage City. You've got all this beautiful Georgian architecture. But without fail, every morning at 8:30, I will walk through the centre of Bath, and I will see a couple of homeless people with a can of Carlsberg Special Brew. That is I have no disrespect to those people. It's just, that is the stereotype. That's what we envisage when we use the word alcoholic. But the as I say, that spectrum is unfathomable in terms of the range of people that this affects. And there's no right answer as to whether or not you should or you shouldn't. The other thing that I would say, however, is that if you are thinking that you might have a drinking problem and you want to cut down doesn't work. It's an all or nothing type thing. Is my own personal. It's all my own personal experiences. But again, that's just speaking for me. It's all of this sort of addiction stuff, and I do reference the AA program, but I try and do it in a sort of light-hearted, available, accessible to everyone type way, so that people who don't have a drinking problem can still read the book. I do address all of this stuff in Ready Set
Life, the new book from James Gwinnett.
There you go. There's the plug. As part of my journey, because that's what the book is. It's my journey through mental ill health, through to redemption and running a load of crazy ultra marathons. I mentioned 100 miles.
Isn't it wonderful now to have mental good health and physical health?
Yeah.
And surely it all must be worth it for that, because I'm a massive advocate for mental health, and and for that, without that, it's nothing. There's nothing,
It's what everything stems from. But what I would say is that has come from my positive mental health now. Has come from a lot of hard work. It's come from a lot of reflection. It's come from a lot of work on myself. It's come from a lot of building mental fitness through self-awareness. There's something called metacognition, which is a phrase that sciencey people use, which is effectively thinking about thinking. It comes back to what I was saying a moment ago about being aware.
That sounds mindfulness-ish.
Mindfulness is, so we need to be careful with that phrase, because that in itself has slightly negative connotations. I believe that mindfulness and meditation conjure up these like lit candles, humming, singing, sitting cross-legged with your fingers touching,
tie-dye
type stuff, which it doesn't have to be. Come back to my point about my running is now my mindfulness. It's my meditation, and it can be anything for anyone, depending on what is useful to you at that point. So mindfulness, I think a really
good definition for the mindful thing is being grounded in your body. Most of us are sort of dead from here down. We're all up here, right? And probably breathe like that as well, when we should be breathing down there.
I agree. I mean, mindfulness can be not looking at your phone while the kettle is boiling. How long does it take for the kettle to boil? 3 minutes? Yeah. It can be not looking at your phone, not doom scrolling.
Oh, I love that term, doom scrolling. Yeah,
or whatever it might be.
There'd be a lot of that going on today.
It can. Oh God, yeah. It can just be thinking to yourself while the kettle's boiling. Right, I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm just going to have a moment of reflection. I'm just going to delve into my own thoughts.
Yeah.
Do I feel, again, that scale of 1 to 10? How do I feel compared to 9 o'clock this morning? How do I feel compared to 3 o'clock yesterday?
Because then you're collecting your own data, and you can get your own feedback.
And you're starting to recognize the emotions that this metacognition is when you start to recognize the situations in your life that cause you to have emotions, and you are therefore better able to deal with them. I use the phrase mental fitness to as something that we use to cope with the bad bits in life, but also recognize and appreciate the good bits. So it's that, because
the bad bits in life won't be as bad when you're. I mean, when I had a bit of difficulty with mental health, but I suppose about four years ago, I'm very open about it on the show, and what I was dealing with at the time, which was partly what was causing it, would have been so much easier. But I was in that vicious circle, not alcohol related particularly, but just depression and, oh my God, what's going on, and it wasn't easy. But looking back, had I had a healthy, mental mindset, then it would have been nowhere near as bad. Because also when you're delving into yourself, you can be detached as well. I find myself asking those philosophical questions. Who's the one doing the thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. So if that's my thinking, who's the one observing the thinking? And who's the one observing the one observing the thinking? News the one observing the one observing the one that's doing the thing. And then, and then I'm down the rabbit hole, and I might as well watch films like What the Bleep Do We Know or something like,
Well,
like
it's
that.
again, it's the whole. Why are you thinking about your thinking? Who are you
Yes.
thinking for? Are you doing it because are you whatever your goal is in life or whatever you're aspiring to? Is it because society thinks that you should be aspiring to
Should
it and
though.
you are
That's a should
therefore
though.
so, or is it because you genuinely want it in your
And
life?
that is a key difference that makes a difference. Any time I heard a lovely phrase. If it's a little bit distasteful, but it's about should, ought, and must.
Right.
And those
Yeah.
three words, if you're going to be fulfilled, need to be kind of removed from your vocabulary. Don't should all over yourself. Don't tighten your order-is, and definitely don't masturbate.
That's good. I like that.
You can have that one. But yeah, but if it's a genuine desire, that's different. That's you watching the marathon. That's I want this, and I'm going to have that.
It's the classic. You know, we all want a big house.
Because you didn't watch that marathon and go, yeah, probably should get a bit fitter and cut down on the
I
drinking.
watched
No,
that and there was a genuine. I need to do this. This will improve my life, and I'm going to do it for me, not for anyone else. I did it for charity, but I did it for me.
Oh, I know.
And
I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's the whole like, you know, do you I want to drive a Range Rover. Well, why do you want to drive a Range Rover? Will it make you feel better? Will it improve your life? Or once you've got a Range Rover, will you just want a better Range Rover? Range Rovers are lovely.
I once heard a story about people that owned, you know, those sort of £20 million yachts. They owned about 3, but were unhappy because the person next door had 4.
Ah, exactly.
That's the point you're making, taken to, shall we say, a ridiculous extreme. Well, I've got no problem with yachts or money or having loads of it, but if you can't be happy because you haven't got one more yacht than the next one, it gets a bit silly for me. Graham says it's not being part of a team sport.
I miss playing rugby every day. It was my one. At the time, I might say it was my one, it was my life passion. I loved it. And I got a massive kick out of running out every Saturday with 14 other lads, putting my body on the line, bruising, battling, all that sort of stuff, and then coming together afterwards and having a few pints.
Oh yeah, they tear each other to pieces. I know one of my good friends is a rugby player. They would tear each other to pieces on the field and then be the best of mates in the clubhouse.
It's the only sport I know whereby exactly that you will try and batter the living hell out of each other for 80 minutes and then all challenge each other to down pints afterwards. What I have learned, however, is to bring that mentality into more singularly focused sports, if that makes sense. So the ultra running, as I said, running is a solitary exercise, but when you do events, you do it with other people and you meet other people and you take tips from and inspiration from other people.
Yes. You kind of touched on this earlier, and it seemed a really good time to put out Graham's other question, saying running is solitary, rugby a team sport. But I was half thinking earlier when you were touching on this earlier, it's not really solitary because there's the camaraderie, there's the peer support. I think peer support's really important in everything that we do.
It is, and I've now taken another chapter in the book, Enriches Life, chapter 19, I think. I've now taken up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, what book's that?
Have I not mentioned it? It's
no.
Ready Set
Life, the new book.
I've just released it.
James Gwinnett.
Search for it.
I'm going to get loads of plugs in. You keep going.
I've taken up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which again might be seen as an individual sport in that it is one person rolling against another person. But I practice with a team of people in Chippenham. There's a club of people that I train with, and we help each other and we support each other. And if someone doesn't quite understand or isn't doing a specific technique quite right, someone else will help them refine that. And
I don't think we ever grow out of needing that peer support. When I do stand-up comedy, second time round in my life, and I've met a great peer group of comedians who are about my level, which is just on the cusp of pro nights, between open mic and pro, and they're great, but the peer support's really important. Having each other's back, and all that sort of stuff. It's great, and no matter what we're doing, I think we always need it. Paul, I can't run because of a current physical issue. When I feel in a down mood or depressive thoughts taking over, I take my friend's dog for a walk. When I say walk, I mean a good 2 or 3 hours walking between 5 to 8 miles. It's a good workout, mate. That's the way I stay fit, fix my mind, and the dogs keep fit too. And my friend gets a good night's sleep because the dogs are exhausted.
I love that, Phil.
Ticks all the boxes.
It's the point of exercise is that your physical fitness and the relation of that to your mental fitness. Exercise can take any form, and I mean any form. I love running. I used to love playing rugby. I now practice jiu-jitsu. You can do fencing, yoga, dancing, tiddlywinks. Walking. It doesn't matter what it is. Esme, who I mentioned in the book, the PT, she did a challenge during COVID whereby she filmed herself doing 30 different exercises in 30 days, stuck it all on social media as a demonstration of the fact that you don't have to just go for a run. There are people out there who say, I don't like running. Fine. Presumably you like dancing or tiddlywinks, or it doesn't matter what the exercise is. Find something, and there will be something for you if you don't like running. There is something out there that is enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting from that is that exercise should be fun. People avoid it because they don't think it's fun, but there must be something. It comes
back to this motivation and this push and this pull and reasons for change. If you're doing something that you don't like, or you find yourself in a position that you don't like, and you try and change that by doing something else that you don't like, it's not going to work in the long term, is it?
No.
You don't have enough of a pull. You've got the push, but the pull needs to be powerful enough as well to maintain you. So motivation is not enough on its own.
I heard the phrase, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. It's got to be something. Again, I keep coming back to that brilliant thing you said at the start of the show. I saw that marathon. I thought, yes, that's the level of energy. That's the kind of energy that you're wanting. Paul Claridge wants to know if you're Chuck Norris in disguise.
I wish. I saw something.
And Graham, he's a bit of a comedian. I can only apologise for him. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, does that mean a small narrow strip you can hit them on? Graham.
I had my next door neighbour, bless him, he and his wife, they're in their 70s. Absolutely delightful couple. They're wonderful. I borrow his hedge trimmer and all the rest of it. We swap garden implements.
All the neighbourly things.
And hedge trimmer is not a euphemism either. When I told him that I was taking up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he said, "Does that involve going for a wax first?" So, and this was my witty 70-year-old neighbour. So, yes, I can't remember what my point was going to be before that. But
that's Graham's fault. He does it in every show. He's got nothing better to do than barrack our guests.
I think the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu thing is interesting though, because it's. When I was running, I was never going to be crossing a finish line of a marathon with Eliud Kipchoge in 2 hours, right? I am 6'5". I weigh 16, 17 stone. I'm a plodder. I cannot run a marathon any faster than about 3 hours, 45 minutes. That is genuinely the fastest I can run a marathon. So you get to a point whereby you can't get any better. And I think there's a lot of disciplines in the world where that is the case. You sort of hit a peak, a plateau of skill level, if you like. Yeah. What I find fascinating about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and speak to my coach about in the book, who's been studying it for 15 years, he says that he is only just scratching the surface. He's a black belt, and he is only just scratching the surface. And I love this concept, and which again can apply to other areas of life. I use running for the mental fitness metaphor. I use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as the metaphor. There's a lot
that you're saying that could be applied to really all areas of life. These are really sort of brilliant life skills, generic life skills almost, aren't they?
And this is the point of the book. I talk about my own personal experiences, but they are applicable to life as a whole. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teaches you to be the eternal student. It teaches you humility. It teaches you to recognize that you are basically that you suck at something, but if you have the attitude that if you keep going back every single week, every single day, whatever it might be, that you might suck ever so slightly less at it each week. One day you'll be good. And I love the idea that I will never complete jiu-jitsu. No one can. There is always a technique to be refined. There's always an extra skill.
That's a great thing, though, because who would want to be perfect? Who would want to be? We're all works in progress, and I don't think we can ever stop evolving.
And whether it's learning a musical instrument or learning a language or learning to better communicate with your peers or your colleagues at work, or learning to be a better leader, or learning to be a better parent, or another
all of it
personal, something that's very personal to me now. There are all of these areas in life where we can constantly be improving, and there's something.
And humility is not a bad thing. I think some people confuse humility with humiliation.
Yes,
which is you suck at that and you're a shit person. It doesn't mean that. All it means is you don't. All it means is you're realistic about it. It would be fairly. If I was practicing humility, I would say I'm not very good at golf because I suck at golf.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm a shit person because I suck at golf. I'm just saying I suck. Could I be good at golf? Probably.
Doesn't reflect on who you are at all.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Another couple of concepts that I explore in the book, again related to jiu-jitsu. One of which is the 4 stages of in psychology, the 4 stages of competence. And
Student,
you start
apprentice, journeyman or woman, master.
It's similar. Yeah, you start with what's called unconscious incompetence.
Oh, the sciencey version. Yeah, go on. Same thing. Go on.
Where you don't know about the skill and you haven't started.
And you don't know that you don't know.
You don't know exactly. You move into conscious incompetence, where you're aware of the skill, but you don't know it. From there, you move into conscious competence, where you've started practicing the skill, but you have to think about it in order to practice it. And from there, you move into unconscious competence. It's like driving the example that is always used is driving a car. When you go in your first driving lesson, you shit yourself, don't you? You go, oh my God, clunky gears. There's someone coming the other way. I can't reverse parallel park. But 5 minutes after passing your test, you're driving down the road whilst smoking a cigarette, tuning the radio and looking at your phone at the same time, right? Without thinking about driving the car. I think my coach would probably argue that you never achieve unconscious competence in jiu-jitsu, because then you've always got to think about something, and that comes back to the mindfulness element of it. When I'm practicing jiu-jitsu, I can't think about anything else because I'm going to get choked or I'm going to get my arm snapped or something. But this idea of continually trying to master something is fascinating. The other concept that I talk about is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. There's 2 famous psychology professors, bizarrely called Dunning and Kruger, who looked at the fact that if you aren't any good at something, you will pretend to be good at it. And it means that we are basically sort of bullshitting our way through life, but whilst doing that, we are unaware of how bad we are at things, but it causes us to make mistakes, but we're also unaware of the mistakes.
So it's unconscious incompetence.
Again, it's unconscious incompetence. The more that we recognize that we are not good at something, the better we can then become at it.
And you can take the sting out of it, where there's no failure, only feedback. That ties into that. And we all know these arrogant people that think they're good at everything when they're actually good at nothing, and they can't take any feedback. You give them the slightest bit of feedback, and they're on the defensive, and they never learn anything. And you went that way.
You're right. I just said it harks back to 2,500 years ago. Socrates was saying, I am not wise, or I'm wise because I know I'm not wise.
Yes.
The sort of famous Stoic phrase that he said many years ago, and it's just so applicable to again everyday life in terms of trying.
Do you agree with the 10,000 hours to mastery idea?
I do to an extent. I don't think it's as black and white as that, and I think there is an element of some people are naturally more gifted at certain things than others. But I think the point, and I make this point at the end of the book, because I sort of dedicate it to my son. He's 10 months old, and we want him and my wife. Thank you.
Hang on, did you say book? What book?
Yeah, I wrote a book. I think I book. It's on Amazon. Go
Ready,
look it up.
Set, Life, the new book by James Gwinnett, available on Amazon.
I make the point that in order for him, Freddie, his name is, in order for him to find what he is good at, as we should all be aiming to, again, it comes back to the point that we said a minute ago about exercise. You might not like running, but you might like something else. And it's only by experimenting and putting ourselves out there and trying things and putting ourselves out of our comfort zone that we find the things that give us joy. And
that's the best quote. That's the best.
It was rugby. It was rugby, running, and jiu-jitsu for me. But it might be rock climbing, tiddlywinks, I've said before, and solving Rubik's cubes for other people. It doesn't matter what it is. But the whole point is that if you are not willing to experiment and do different things, if you just say to yourself, "I don't like running," and you're done with it, then you're not gonna find what it is in life that brings you that.
Because it shuts down everything. Because I think the real meaning of that is I don't like running or anything else.
And that's another interesting concept. I mentioned it briefly, and then we sort of got sidetracked about when people say to me, when I say to people, I enjoy running and I've done 100-mile ultra marathons, all this mad stuff, and people say, "Oh, I could never do that." My response is, well, why? Why could you not do that? 10 years ago, I broke my neck playing rugby. I spent 3 years in a spiral of alcoholic depression, and I now run ultra marathons and do jiu-jitsu for fun.
Which is the power of the mindset.
And it's the quickness, the speed with which people respond to me, the speed with which they say, "I can never do that." It's almost as if, again, it's the survival instinct. It's almost as if their brain hasn't even had time to process the information before this phrase comes out.
Before it kicks in.
So instantaneous. But my argument is that if you tell yourself that you can't run 100 miles, you might have no inclination to run 100 miles ever in your life. And I don't blame you. It's not fun. It's half fun and it's not half not fun. We've been through the type 2.
I know what you mean.
If you say to yourself, "I can't do that," what else are you telling yourself that you can't do? Are you also telling yourself that you can't get a promotion, be happy in your relationship, succeed at your job? There's so many ramifications.
I love the way you said that out the comfort zone, that's where you find the things that give you joy, because I think that's really powerful. It comes back yet again to that hell yes, like you watching that marathon, that to give you that motivation. What an amazing story. What an amazing chap you are. Thank you. You've been a great guest.
That's fair. That's very kind of you to say so. And if I haven't mentioned it, I've got a book out.
Well, I was leaving the best till last, so I would like you to give a shameless. I'm going to shut up for the next minute. You've got 1 minute to sell the audience your book.
Crikey, wow, right.
So I'll even take the self off. It's all
Ready, Set, Life is my new book, available on Amazon in hardback, paperback, and Kindle formats. It's based on my life's learnings of overcoming mental ill health and redemption, I suppose you can call it, in the form of going on to run ultra marathons. And it was the foundations of it, I suppose, are based on my son being born in December and the emotional roller coaster that I went on through that process as I tried to come to terms with the world in its current format and the mess that we find ourselves in, and helping navigate young Freddie through all of that, with the mindset that yes, it's a bit of a mess, but with the right mindset, with by building mental fitness and by being positive, we can thrive in spite of all of the Donald Trumps going on at the moment.
Yeah. I tell you what, you're going to have some wonderful life lessons to teach Freddie. I think he's very lucky to have you as a dad. I mean, that's
wonderful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've been a great guest. Keep in touch.
Will do.
Yeah, keep us updated with what you're doing and stuff. If you'd like to come back on again and chat about, have you done the Proclaimers run yet, which is 500 miles and then 500 more?
Not quite yet. No, I think so. The longest run that I did was from London to Bristol. It was 145 miles non-stop. It took me about 30 hours, and that was 6 days after getting married. My very accommodating wife allowed me to do this.
She's a very generous lady.
She's a pretty good girl. Krista, she's incredible. She gets a lot of mentions in the book, unsurprisingly. But
Yes.
I think the outcome of that was right, James. Yeah, let's just sort of rein it back in now. We've got young Freddie now, and the trouble is with training for ultramarathons is it just takes up hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Nice.
So with a young son now, who is the absolute light of my life. Having him in my life, I've sort of reined back in that training, and I'm still keeping.
So you only run 100 miles now?
Oh, just a couple of 100 miles every now and again.
Before breakfast,
is a couple of hours a week, and a couple of gym sessions, and a short couple of sort of 5K runs. Just keep me ticking over, and I'm quite.
Do you have a website? I'll put your Insta handle on there. Do you have a website?
No, the website. I mean, the website to plug is just the book. Go on Amazon, search for Ready Set Life. It's the first.
Okay, but you're on LinkedIn and on Insta at James Gwinnett.
And I'm on Instagram. Yeah,
okay.
I'm on Twitter.
James Gwinnett, absolutely wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for being on the show, and
a really great pleasure.
All the very best. I hope our paths cross again.
No, I hope so. Yeah, really great pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for yours. Take care, my friend. Russ and great guest. Russ and the gang will be back on Friday with Jonathan Bez, theatre critic, screen queen Chantal Ricards, and Phil, Dave, and Russ will be back on Friday. And I'll see you Monday with Russ and the gang. Take care. Good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in.